good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ask the Theologian on this Wednesday. Glad that you are here. Thanks for joining us. And we are going to take today your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. And I think have a good time here. I'll get Biblify all set up. For those of you who are following along on Biblify, you will be able to do that and start the session. There we go. Sorry, I didn't get that done prior to the beginning of the program, but that's the nice thing about a program that takes place every day is you can be kind of casual. You don't have to be totally professional, right? Hey, tonight, by the way, I'll just pull it up. Tonight, we will be in Hosea, the 8th chapter, and I believe the 11th verse is where we'll be picking up, and so looking forward to that Wednesday night study on this snowy Wednesday here in Taos, New Mexico. Whatever it is, where you are, I hope that you are having a great day, like Pittston, Pennsylvania, or Pueblo West, Colorado, or Holly Springs, Mississippi, or down in Florida, or up in Wisconsin, or over in Arizona, or in London. Alex and Terry, good to see you. Or Mississippi, got a rainy day in Missouri is what I meant to say. Edith, Belgium's here with us, and Trinidad, Colorado, and more Mississippi. Good to see all of you all here. To all that. Let's see, is this 64 degrees in Virginia. I'm glad, to him be the glory. I'm glad to know where you are. For some reason, I didn't place, I don't know if I didn't know or if I forgot. It could have been either one. But 64 degrees in Virginia, a skiff of snow in Pueblo West. Skiff of snow. I was looking, we got a good deal of snow at our house. Now our house it's 12 miles from the church, but it's also about 1,600 feet higher. And so we get a lot more snow at the house than we do here in town. Here in town, I'd say we have a skiff of snow. I was looking at it's a skiff. The ground's kind of covered, but things are poking through in town. But there's at the house, 14 inches, that was last night, and it's still going today. So I've been spending my time last night. I needed to do it this morning, also plowing. But anyway, glad you're here. Okay, now let's get started. And I see that Stephanie down in the hill country of Texas has given me the first question for today, and I haven't even read it yet, but she says, here's something for the evangelical garbage segment. So we're going to put it unannounced. I'm not going to read it until after, but ladies and gentlemen, here we go with today's moment of evangelical garbage, brought to you by Stephanie in the big country of Texas, and we hear something for your evangelical garbage segment. Doing right isn't enough. We have to do it for the right reasons. God changes the heart. External practices of religion doesn't lead to internal transformation. Jesus, 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 Jesus. my social media friends post stuff like this all the time. She's a recovering addict and credits her relationship with Christ for that accomplishment. I actually know her and taught her kids in middle school. I'd love to show her right division, but probably will never have the chance. This kind of stuff, it sort of sounds good and sort of, has this a little bit of a biblical basis if you don't rightly divide. And that's because, you can take a few passages like the Pharisees, who were, and a lot of times in the prophets, where they were just going through the motions. As a matter of fact, let's say the book of Malachi. In the book of Malachi, I wish one of you would just put the fires out. So they were bringing the fires of the altar in the book of Malachi, but the Lord says, no, put it out. I'm not pleased with it at all. I don't want this. And so not only doing right, but you have to do it for the right reasons. And then you get, there are people out there who are doing the right thing and they're not doing it for the right reasons. And it becomes a very, I don't know, would you say a judgmental kind of thing that takes place within evangelicalism? And it becomes a little bit also a thing that brings doubt into the heart. So here's a fella that has gone to the evangelical church maybe, and he feels like, I really want to make my life better. I really want to please the Lord. And he goes and he begins to go to Sunday school, and he goes to church, and he goes, but after a while, his New Year's resolution goes away from his mind, the inspiration of the new moment. And so through all of that, he ends up still going. I'm going. But he's not going for the right reasons, and he knows he's not going for the right reasons. He's going for, some moralistic reasons. And then he says, well, am I even saved? I don't even know if I'm saved. I don't think I have a right relationship with the Lord, because I heard this girl over here and she says, oh, you gotta have this heart that's bubbling over with warm fuzzies. Otherwise, this is not real. It's not legit. Now, this is the problem when you make up things you have to do. There's no end to it. You make up another thing, and then you make up not only the thing you had to do, but the attitude you had to do it in. And there's always something for the preacher to borrow from a book, Evangelical Garbage, down in the subtitle, how evangelicalism is confused, manipulative, and downright dangerous. Because it's confused, it can always be manipulative again. And so much of evangelicalism does get manipulative. And this also leads to a form of worship which is very prevalent in evangelicalism, and that is this feeling form of worship. The goal in worship is to get you to close your eyes and say, lift your hands, raise your, That's the goal in evangelical worship. If you don't get there, then something's wrong with you. And honestly, I'll tell you, for me, I like a good bit of emotion, just like anybody else. But well, maybe not. I'm a little bit. I've admitted before, I get a little bit of thinking side, and so the emotions for me. That's just a little bit of icing on the cake every now and then, but it's not really what I'm after when I go to church. So when I sit there and they are, singing Jesus, the name Jesus, for the 80th time, and the people up there in the color coordinated clothes are just Jesus, Jesus, and it becomes this mantra thing, I'm thinking, oh, get me out of here. But there are a lot of people who think this feeling they're trying to elicit, that they're trying to manipulate out of me, that's the feeling I'm supposed to have if I'm a real Christian. And so they begin to have doubts on their salvation, and they go round and round and round and round and round. And so you get on this. Now, you mentioned that your friend is a recovering addict. There is... I'm not an expert on recovering addicts, but we've all met and dealt with recovering addicts. And there is a degree with recovering addicts that everything, often, there's going to be exceptions, everything a recovering addict does, they do it like 250%. Never just, kind of, I don't know. I'll say even keeled, though maybe that's not the right word. Somebody else might call it mediocre, But a recovering addict often, because of some of the experiences they've had, and especially if they were able to quit cold turkey or pretty quick like that, then they learn that as, hey, this does work. And there's some benefit to it. This does work. And so when then they come into the Christian life, they do it 250%. There's no 125% for me. It is all the way. And so it does bring in the, do the right thing, do it in the right way, do it at the right time, do it. But here's sadly what happens. You can't do that for 30 years. Very few people can do that for 30 years. And so they don't ever get the biblical basis, the biblical background, and they end up dropping. This is why recovering addicts do tend, and again, I'm no expert on this, so if I'm wrong, just ignore it completely. But seems to me they do tend to be hot or cold. And there's this great pendulum swing, very seldom right in the middle. They're always really over here or they're over here. So a recovering addict, maybe for 2 or 3 or 5 or maybe even 10 years, man, they are, hot as fire in terms of their spiritual walk. But then you meet them 15 years later, I don't do that. I tried that. I think that evangelicalism ought to honestly cut the emotional thing. If emotions come out of some thing about, sometimes you read about grace. Wow, that's just absolutely amazing. You sing about grace. Wow, that's absolutely amazing. You hear a story that's, it pulls on the emotions. Okay, if that happens, it happens. But to go, if evangelicalism would say, what we want is for you to do this for about 40 years in Bible study so that you would be an unbelievable Bible expert by the time you're dead. How's that? That would be so much better for evangelicalism. Obviously, what they're doing with the emotionalism, with the do it right, with the manipulation, it hasn't worked. It's dying on the vine. It's going away. And literally, most of the larger evangelical churches, let's say they have 3,000 people that come, they've got to have about 2,000 new people every year just to keep up. That changes some by the community, because some of it is just natural transition. If you're in a more mobile community, a more transient community, if you will, a suburb that has a lot of people moving in and a lot of people moving, people get transferred out, and then that number is going to be even higher. If you're in a very stable community, maybe it's going to be 1,000 people a year. But these large evangelical churches have to have, I would say if they run 3,000, I would say they have to have at least 1,000 newcomers every year just to keep up. Now, that's a sign that this thing doesn't work. It's a little bit of a Ponzi scheme, and someday it collapses when you don't have enough people putting the money in. Then somebody gets left holding the bills for all this thing. And what would happen in evangelicalism, and it used to be this way, no doubt about it, the reason my church has been here for 80 years is not because it down through the 50s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, it wasn't because, wow, they were cutting edge on this music. If you've watched this, that's not the case. But old Baptist churches used to preach the Bible about 3 times a week. And you just did that for 40 years. And in the end, you ended up with some pretty good people. I would like us to get back there. So, okay, you're right here. It's not good enough just to do what's right. You got to do it with the right heart. And that is just manipulation. And that is today's moment of evangelical garbage, brought to you by Stephanie in Texas. Thank you very much from West Texas for bringing us that word. Appreciate it very much. Let's go to, I tell you what today, I'm working my way from the bottom up in the list, from the bottom up. So the newest questions are going to get first, and so therefore we come to Alex. Your brother's on too. And I am going to make arrangements to see you all soon. I'm looking forward to meeting Alex and Lenny and whoever can join us there. If I just respond to the email, right? I got to hurry up. I'm trying to figure out the schedule. That's the problem. I'm like, okay, when what's the best window? And you probably have a window too. So there we go. Okay. Alex has a question about Ezekiel 18 verses 20 and 21. And Ezekiel always gets me, because I do just like Alex does and put easy 18:20, but it always wants to go to Ezra. So Ezekiel, EZEK, 18 verse 20 and 21. Let's read this and then get the question. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. The Son shall not bear the iniquity of the Father, neither shall the Father bear the iniquity of the Son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him. But if the wicked turn from his sins that he hath committed, and keep all my statutes, and do that which is lawful and right, he shall surely live, he shall not die. Okay, the soul that sins, it'll die. If you're wicked, you get the death of the wicked. If you're righteous, you get the life of the righteousness, and if you're wicked and you turn, then you will not die. That's the message of Ezekiel 18 verses 20 and 21. Now, as Alex says, is that an example of doers of the law shall be justified? Now, I like your thinking here, Alex. And the quick answer is yes. It's a great example of it, and one I haven't used, and I should use, and I will use. So let's think about this here. Again, everyone other than right dividers, that would be standard dispensationalism, that would be covenant theology, it would be evangelicals, it would be Protestants. Let's leave the Catholics out because they would have a different view. But Protestant, evangelical, most of fundamentalist theology, with a few exceptions. So only over in the right dividing section. Whether they call themselves that or not, because you remember, I got this book up here by Dr. David Walker, who's an independent fundamentalist Baptist, independent fundamentalist, King James only, pre-tribulational, premillennial Baptist, not unlike me, who, has this revised dispensationalism dismantled. And he would agree with us. I doubt he would put himself in the mid-acts camp, but he would agree with us. He would rightly divide like this. Peter Ruckman, we've had a few conversations going on online, and he would be vehemently against mid-acts dispensationalism, but he would agree with us on this. So there's a little sliver over on the far right dividers and those who wouldn't call themselves that, but they do it. But all of standard evangelicalism and standard dispensationalism, like, for example, let's take Ryrie would disagree with us. Let's put him in the standard dispensationalism camp. Who's the modern? I don't know. Probably Pentecost. He would go between classic and more revised dispensationalism. Every dispensational teacher you would hear about today, they would disagree with us, like Woods and Ben Ware and some of these others. They would disagree with us. Now, I've talked so long, you think, disagree and agree, and what are we agreeing with and disagreeing with? Here's what everyone else would say. Everyone has always been saved by grace through faith. It has never been the works of the law. And yet we come along and say, no, the doers of the law shall be justified. Just like Paul said, just like James said, the doers of the law shall be justified. Now, Paul didn't say it when he was talking about me and you, because we're not under the law. Those who are under the law were justified by the law. The doers of the law shall be justified. Now, this is a good example of it. Because how do you take that idea of it's always been grace? Always been grace. We should, I don't know, I don't really do interviews on this program, but at some point we should bring an always grace guy on and say, let's chat. Let's try to put this together. You know, my problem in doing interviews is that, one, you have to be a little bit nice. You know, you're the host and you don't want to be rude to your guest, and so there's that issue there. And so you kind of skirt around a little bit. So if I could just invite one on to say, look, I'm going to be snarky and blunt, and you be the same. I got tough skin, you got tough skin. Let's really deal with the issues here. It would be an interesting conversation, wouldn't it? Maybe I'll play that up someday. Okay, so you take someone who says, always by grace. Well, what's Ezekiel talking about here? The soul that sinneth, it shall die. The son shall not bear the iniquity of the father, neither shall the father bear the iniquity of the son. The righteous, let's catch this. The righteousness of the righteous shall be on him. That says, if I'm righteous, I'll have the benefits of righteous. The wickedness of the wicked shall be on him. But if a wicked will turn from all his sins that he hath committed, and let me go back to that, and do that which is lawful, he shall surely live. I mean, let's highlight that whole thing. One who was wicked, but will now turn and do that which is lawful and right, he shall surely live. That doesn't say anything about believe, doesn't say anything about faith. I suspect that somebody who would turn and do has faith, but this doesn't mention it. And could you imagine me or you or anyone else presenting the gospel, and some wicked fella comes up and says, hey, you know, I am concerned. You know, I saw this little pink thing on your desk that says, where will you spend eternity? And I'm afraid when I consider my life, I'm going to spend eternity in hell. What do I need to do? And I would say, you need to do that which is lawful and right, and you shall surely live. I might even add Jennifer's evangelical garbage that she presented and say, and do it with the right reasons. Do what is lawful and right, and do it for the right reasons, and you shall surely live. Even though that's what most evangelicals actually preach, and a good bit of dispensationalists, that, if we put it that blunt, they would say that's heresy. No, it's by grace through faith, not of works, lest any man should boast. Not of works. How in the world is do that which is lawful and right, not of works? I'll wait for the answer. They probably would spin it in some way to say, well, it's ultimately doing what is lawful and right is to trust in the shed blood of Jesus Christ. If that's the case, that doing what is lawful and right is to trust in the shed blood of Jesus Christ, then God is the worst communicator ever. He could have just said that. If I could say it, God could say it. Does God really need me to interpret? Because he's such a poor communicator. He needs me to interpret what that actually means? If so, what kind of God is that? Do you want a God who can't say what he means and means what he says. You can't take him at his word because it's got to be interpreted by someone with a PhD. Kind of ridiculous, isn't it? So I think this is a great example that doers of the law shall be justified. Thank you very much for that, Alex in London. I appreciate a good reminder. And, let me say on that Ezekiel 18, 20, and 21, that is a prophecy about the future. It was not talking about in Ezekiel's day, because in Ezekiel's day, to go back to verse 20, the son, here it says, the son shall not bear the iniquity of the father. But in Ezekiel's day, the iniquity of the father was held to the son, to the third and fourth generations. So Ezekiel's saying there's a different day coming. And it's actually, Ezekiel 18 is a prophecy of the millennium. And it's in the millennium that, I hate to use it because evangelicals messed up this term, but I'll go ahead, that there's this generational sin that will be done away. And, it's you and your work standing before God in the millennium. That very much goes against that sort of standard issue that goes there. I appreciate that. I'm picking up in the middle of a conversation here, so I might have some of this off. But Jerry, who's a pretty good scholar out in Arizona, says Ryrie has a chapter in his book, Dispensationalism, dedicated to his objection of ultra-dispensationalism. He lumps us in with Acts 28, folks. That I should go back to that book. I don't know, we might have a copy on our shelves. I don't know. And I should read that chapter again, and maybe do a session where I interact with Ryrie on that issue, and put that together. And you know what I think also would be kind of an interesting thing on the various aspects of division. It has to do with where did the age of grace begin, which I think is a fundamental issue. Where did the age of grace begin? So I would say that Ryrie, I'm guessing here a little bit, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong. Ryrie probably puts anybody who says it began after Acts 2, they are ultra-dispensationalists or hyper-dispensationalists. They divide too much, he might say, or in the wrong place. And it's sort of, it's a cheap argument. But anyway, so if it's after Acts 2, that's ultra or hyper dispensationalism. But there are, say, mid-Acts and Acts 28. What I would like to do someday, and I might do it in Branson this year. Let me see. Stay tuned for an announcement that I have never given before. Do I have the graphic? It's coming. Stay tuned. Okay. I don't have it all that clear, but here I'm going to give it to you. Right division, issues, and answers. That is going to be the topic of our Branson Labor Day conference. Right division, issues, and answers. I am moving away, first time in, goodness, I don't know, close to 10 years, I am moving away from the graphically presented theme that we've been doing at Branson. And so we will not have graphically presented, but we will do right division, issues, and answers. And I was trying to, I can't put this on the screen where I can show you. But I'm going to talk about some things like how right division solves theological dilemmas, like the charismatic dilemma, the Calvinist dilemma, the prophetic dilemma, the mystical dilemma, the legal dilemma. I want to address the critics of right division. Is right division hyper? Is right division heresy? So Ryrie would say it was hyper. Would he say it was heresy? Some do. We'll talk about that. We'll work on a working definition of right division. And this controversy of when did the age of grace begin? We'll look at the effect of theology on right division. Baptism, the Lord's Supper, the way you share the gospel, the obligations under the law, the tithe, these various things that we will look at. So once again, you heard it here first. Branson Labor Day Conference. The topic will be right division, issues and answers. Now, one of the things we ought to do in that is study what theological difference comes about if you're Acts 28 or if you're mid-Acts. And is it of such consequence that a mid-Acts should mark and avoid an Acts 28? Or are they things that we could look at and say, okay, we take the Lord's Supper, they don't take the Lord's Supper? I don't think you'd mark and avoid somebody for that. So we should look at that. So here I'm going to add it. Theological differences between mid-Acts and Acts 28. There we go. It's now been added to the conference. And I should make a note for myself. Ryrie's chapter on ultra-dispensationalism. And I can put that in the objections. Thanks for the help, Jerry. Sorry to go off there. Jerry also says Ryrie sees the start of the age of grace synonymous with the start of the church. The body of Christ is happening with the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in Acts chapter 2, which is, let's call it the standard dispensational position. Excellent. Oh, yeah. Jerry also says Ironside thought the mid-Acts position was satanic. I think Ironside... Here's my opinion of Ironside. You know, almost everybody, even non-dispensationalists, have heard of Ironside, if they're a preacher anyway, Harry Ironside. And they would take Ironside and say, oh, you know, he's got these wonderful commentaries. In my opinion, Ironside was the preacher for shallow, feeling-oriented people who wanted just a devotional thought. When I read Ironside's commentaries, it's like, oh, that's a nice little devotional thought. He doesn't really get into exegeting the word. He gives nice devotional thoughts from a pre-tribulational, premillennial Acts 2 perspective. You know, I guess I'd rather have nice devotional thoughts from a pre-tribulational, premillennial Acts 2 perspective than I would nice devotional thoughts from a covenant theologian. But in the end, it's still nice theological thoughts. And so, I don't know, it just doesn't... to me, there's not enough meat there to bother with. And I used to use Ironside when I was a Southern Baptist preacher, and I was looking for nice dispensational thoughts from a pre-tribulational, premillennial perspective, and wanted to give devotional kind of sermons that, you know, gave the EBGBs. I have a series called Yeah, let me show you how I got here. If you go to randywhiteministries.org and just do the little find thing on your computer, Control or Command F, and type the word wrongly. You come up to here to wrongly dividing the word of truth. And this, in looks like 8 sessions of wrongly dividing, talks about, it is based upon Ironside's book of the same title, Wrongly Dividing the Word of Truth. And I've got a session, What is Ultra-Dispensationalism? And this is, again, it's based upon Ryrie, who, what was the word here that was given? Ironside thought the mid-acts position was satanic. He did. I mean, he just lost it on this. And that book, Wrongly Dividing the Word of Truth, in the 8 sessions that I go through that, basically I just show how Ironside didn't get it at all. He totally missed it. And that is, unfortunately, his book, and he went against E.W. Bullinger, is kind of who he was arguing with. The problem is Bullinger had died like 20 years earlier, and Bullinger couldn't respond, and nobody was responding on Bullinger's behalf. And so Ironside's messed up view of right division became the common view that is parroted to this day. Anybody against the mid-Acts or even Acts 28 position, they blabber, spew forth the same thing Ironside was saying in the 1930s, I think it was. And they need to get a better grip on it and give a better defense of Acts 2 versus mid-Acts. If they're going to do it, give a good one. And I notice on these, and I mentioned some of these videos here lately that have gone against it. I've seen one of a podcast I wasn't familiar with, but it had a couple people I am familiar with, Mondo Gonzalez and Pete Garcia, both who are really good men. And then another one had who's the guy that was pastor in Duluth Bible Church? I've forgotten his name. It'll come to me in a minute. And I think he's moved out of Duluth now. But he's a rabid anti-mid-Acts guy. They go online fairly often and argue against mid-Acts dispensationalism. At least the Duluth guy fairly often. But he's arguing against a straw man. That's not mid-Acts dispensation. He doesn't even know what he's talking about, honestly. And by the way, he's invited on this program if he hears this. And let's really talk about what it is. And get Dennis Rosker. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. So they're arguing against something they don't know about, and they don't know about it because they've never actually listened and studied. It's the same way. I used to be the same way, and I probably am still on some other theologies, but it's the same way with me and the gap theory, which I don't hold. I've done a session on why I don't hold to the gap theory. But I used to say the gap theory, what quackery the gap theory was. They just made that to accommodate science. But then I studied it, and I had to give up that straw man argument. I had to get a better argument for it. I still don't hold to the gap theory, but at least now I can respect Schaeffer, I don't know if Schaeffer held to it or not. Schofield is what I was trying to say. Schofield and Bullinger and some of these other, it was the standard dispensational position. Where'd they go wrong? They have a good exegetical argument for the gap theory, not a scientific argument. They don't base it upon, old Darwin said that it's an old earth, and therefore I gotta fit the Bible. That's not what they're doing. They got a good exegetical argument, And so you have to bring that in and call you to it. Oh, Pastor Drew said the one who called me a heretic. He got called a heretic because of his little booklet, The Israel of God. We should bring that up on a special so that it comes back up into the sales group. But actually, that was not. Dennis Rosker is not the one that called you a heretic on that. That was another guy whose name I forgot that lives in Connecticut. And not the other guy who lives in Connecticut. Sorry about all that. But anyway, yeah, it's unfortunate that so many of these just, if they even get a sniff of it, they will instantly mark and avoid. Okay. Moving on, let's go to Jerry in Arizona, who's got a question. What's your opinion of the writings of J. Sidlow Baxter, author of Awake My Heart devotional? I'm going to go, I just looked it up here. I'm going to go a little bit by memory. I think J. Sidlow Baxter, and I may be very wrong. I'm going to correct myself in a moment. Let's just see if I'm right. I think J. Sidlow Baxter was an old-style Methodist. The old-style Methodists weren't typically all that dispensational, but they could be fairly biblical. And I remember a poem that J. Sidlow Baxter once wrote, and that poem was about, I think it's called The Master's Face, if I'm not mistaken, The Master's Face. I should look that up and find that and see, because it really was a good poem. In fact, let me just look that up. See if I can find it here. No, that doesn't come up. He also, I think he wrote another poem about I'll be home for Christmas or something like that, and it kind of went through someone's life, and at the end it's a little bit of a sad, happy, grace devotional poem. How's that? That talks about a guy dying at about Christmas time. And it, it's a little emotional, but I guess poems are supposed to be, So let's see. First of all, let's bring up the world's worst theological site, which is Wikipedia, and see about J. Sidlow Baxter. He was Australian. I didn't know that. Theologian, evangelist, authored 30 books, somewhere around there. Analysis of the Bible, advocating a fundamentalist Christian theological perspective. I would agree with that. His most popular work was Explore the Book, a 1760-page tome that analyzes. Is that how you spell that? Analyzes? I don't know. I should get an editor. And summarizes. I would spell it more like summarizes, but anyway, each book of the Bible. I should check that out and see. From that, I suspect I could find out really quick, like just looking at the summary of the Gospel of John or the summary of Acts, I could figure out where is he on the whole scale. But so he was born in Australia but raised in England, attended Spurgeon's College, and married Ethel Smith. And that's all it says? You gotta be kidding me. Somebody should add something about J. Sidlow Baxter on that, because that's like nothing. So, unfortunately, the question, what's your opinion? My opinion is, I haven't read a lot of J. Sidlow Baxter. I've stumbled on some of his things from time to time, and a few of them, that poetry anyway, I kind of liked. And I knew enough to know he's not a liberal, even though I said maybe he was Methodist, but he's definitely the old style Methodist. He would be a Bible preaching Methodist, if he even is a Methodist, and that doesn't tell me. That I would say that his stuff is going to be better than the average evangelical stuff out there today. I was trying to see if there was any other thing in here that gave us more of a, let's see. Okay, J. Sidlow, oh, that's a conference. I didn't realize I thought he died long before that. Okay, Spurgeon's author of 30 books, ministered in churches, Bible conferences, missionary centers throughout the United States, Canada, Great Britain, and other places. Scholarly, but very practical and helpful. Okay, and this can be yours for only $35. So someone's got the, I guess that's audio since it comes on CD. I should look into that more and find out, but my guess is if you want a devotional and you're okay with not always being a rightly divided devotional, J. Sidlow Baxter's probably one. Does anyone know, I see that, well, Jerry's well read. We've got Joel on here. He's got a comment I'm going to read in a moment. I was going to mention Joel at Bible Doctrines to Live By. We've got Pastor Drew on here, perhaps some others. Is there devotional material written from a mid-Acts perspective? My perspective, and this is, maybe I'm just reading myself into this, what do you call that, projection? My perspective is that most mid-Acts or right division writing really is not devotional in style. It is commentary, it is scholarly, it is, it's the Brian Ross, the David Reed, the Randy White kind of stuff that would be out there. Even the, Clarence C.W. Stam, those kind of things that are out there, which is not really devotional material. But some people do like a devotional material, and there's nothing wrong with devotional material. So is there any, kind of, hey, here's your devotional writer that has that. So Joel says Baxter's book, Strategic Grasp of the Bible, has a good chapter on the problems with the Acts 2 position, but follows it up with, but it's the only choice we have. I find that a lot, that some of these guys with brains, and I think J. Sidlow Baxter had one, some of these guys that have a brain and use it, do say, there's some challenges here. But they do kind of come like that. It's the only choice we have. And they never really deal with the other. Now, that might be an issue that even I would say, when I came into mid-Acts dispensationalism, I didn't know it existed. So I became one before I knew there were others out there. And, it would have been a help, I suppose, had I known that there was, J.C. O'Hare and some of these guys out there. That had sort of paved the way, but I didn't know that. And so maybe he just didn't know that. And he didn't live in a day when you could just Google it, So especially, I would say if you're not in the upper Midwest, that Michigan, Wisconsin area, where it seems that mid-Acts is a little more prominent, he might not have ever run across it. Now, you would think he would have known Bullinger, however, being English and being a scholar. So I don't know why he just said, it's the only choice we have. But let's give it to him this way. He was a busy guy. He was writing devotionals and preaching sermons and traveling about. You don't really have time to check out everybody out there. So maybe. Maybe through that, okay, so he's a fundamentalist and a dispensationalist. Those typically go together, not always, but typically go together. So are there any good devotionals out there? Cliff says Joel Hayes loves Baxter. Joel, thank you. There's the answer. C.R. Stam wrote a devotional book, Grace Gospel Publishers in Denver, has Through the Year Devotional. Very good. Jerry says my Bible college academic dean loves Baxter. Is that Frontier Bible College out in Wyoming? There probably should be more of that. You know, I have been reading, I don't think I have it right here. No, I don't. The former chief rabbi, he's dead now, but the former chief rabbi of Israel, his name will come to me in a moment. He wrote kind of a devotional book. In fact, he did it annually, a devotional book on the Torah. And the Torah is broken into weekly readings, and so he would have a devotional that goes with that weekly reading. And he's actually pretty good. He's not a Christian. But I find sometimes that Torah stuff that's not written from a Christian perspective avoids covenant theology garbage. A lot of those of us who are Christians read our dispensation into the Torah. Well, obviously, if you're a Jew, you don't do that. But if you respect the text like this guy did, then you get some good insights into it. I need to find that and put the latest one out in all that. Okay, thank you, Jerry. Awake my heart. I'm going to guess it's not a bad one. How's that? I should look more into it. Somebody read it for me and tell me if we should start selling it at Dispensational Publishing. And other J. Sidlow Baxter works. He wrote 30 books. We don't have any of them. Excellent. Thank you. To him be the glory in Virginia. I did not forget. Looking for a good Bible, someone had mentioned the Passion Bible to me because it was in Aramaic. It's so bride-oriented. So many people are using the Passion Translation with the bride doctrine. I am not familiar with the Passion Translation, but let's look that up a little bit. I can tell you already I don't like it, which, a fellow ought to at least put a little study into it. But I'm not a fan of the modern versions for a number of reasons, but almost always it is, the two main reasons are, one, the underlying text. Did they come from the Textus Receptus? I doubt it, but probably they went from the 27th or the 28th or maybe the 29th version of the constantly edited critical text. I don't trust that text. And two is, they almost always, as To Him Be the Glory mentions here, they almost always come with some theological perspective, rather than we just want to get linguists together who can translate well. And that's what the King James was, even though I'm sure the king had both political and religious motivations for doing it. But he gathered together a group of, 56 scholars or something like that, that honestly, I doubt the world has ever produced that many exquisite linguistic scholars in one room since that time, before or since that time. The other translations, like you take Jerome or you take, Darby, and they did kind of, they were good linguists, no doubt about it. And Darby, I know him better than Jerome. Jerome had a little bit of a Catholic leaning there a little bit. But Darby was a very good linguist. So I look to him sometimes to see what he has to say. But that's one guy. Why do one guy when I can get 56? If I could put 56 Darbys in the same room, that kind of mitigates over the theological assumptions that are brought into the room and need to be balanced out, need to be undone. So the Passion translations, first time I have heard about it, but we go right here. Encounter the Heart of God. The Passion translation is modern, easy-to-read Bible translation that unlocks the passion of God's heart and expresses his fiery love, merging emotion and life-changing truth. That whole thing right there would say, nah, I don't want it. Well, let's go through this several times. Let's ignore modern and pretend like, okay, maybe that's a good thing. but I don't really want to ignore it. But easy to read. I don't care. I don't care if it's easy to read. I want accurate. And if I'm not predisposed to do so, but if I was predisposed to make, the Randy White translation, the first thing I would say is I have attempted to, as accurately, as linguistically possible, to get this from Hebrew into English, from Greek into English, from Aramaic into English. That's what I would want to do. I don't care if it's easy to read. I want it to be accurate. Bible translation that, see right here, unlocks the passion of God's heart and expresses his fiery love. We've already talked about I'm not all that emotionally driven. And this sounds like an emotionally driven translation. And it sounds like they're going to unlock the passion of God's heart. I say it sounds like that because I read it. So they want to unlock the passion of God's heart. The problem is, if the passion of God's heart is not expressed in the words of Hebrew and Greek, then we don't know what the passion of God's heart is. So I suspect often they're reading the passion into there. I get this a lot of times, and I'll say especially from women, but I suspect it happens sometimes from men too, where someone will come and say, oh, I think something's troubling him. I think he's burdened over something. Oh, I remember a couple of months ago that, Dennis Rosker said something that was untrue about him, and I think he's just burdened by this. I think he's down. I think he's really struggling, and we really need to pray for him. And I'll hear this, and I'm like, gosh, you are so far off. That's not me at all. See, he doesn't even want to admit it. The passion of his heart is burdened right now. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, let's gather around. And I think every pastor gets this a little bit, but every person probably gets this a little bit, because we try to read another person's emotions. I think reading another person's emotions is bankrupt. Don't even try to do it. And even let's say someone's got tears coming out their eyes. I don't know why they're crying. I mean, I hate to sound insensitive here, but I know some people who cry because it's snowing outside and it's so beautiful, and it makes me think of my mother, and and other people are crying because it's snowing and I hate snow, and why are they crying? I don't know why they're crying. That's where their emotions are. That's why they're crying. And, crying, laughing, whatever. So I can't even read emotions. Okay, this is why I'm not a good counselor. I can't even read emotions when, you're crying, you're laughing, you're stoic, whatever. I say quit trying to read emotions. So that's, if we can't do it with people, and I find very few people who can read my emotions. I think it's because I don't have any. And they try to read some that I don't have. And I always feel awkward when they start doing that. I'm like, my emotion is, that's weird. Quit thinking about, what's burdening my heart or whatever. And usually I'm thinking about, I need to finish editing that book. So anyway, you take our inability to read emotions of each other, and then you try to unlock the passion of God's heart and express his fiery love. Just get the words. And don't quit this merging emotion and life-changing truth. No, just give me the words. I don't need you as my therapist. I just need you as the words. There's the translation philosophy that would be interesting to read. Let's look at a verse comparison just a little bit here. Okay, here's the 23rd Psalm. Oh, excuse me. I'm trying to find a nice way to put this, but but I can't think of a nice way. I'll just say I almost croaked just reading the first few lines of Psalm 23. The Lord is my best friend. Lord is my best friend and my shepherd. I always have more than enough. Yuck! When I read that, I have the same feeling if I went to a movie with my buddy and he put his arm around me. That's the feeling I get here. The Lord is my best. Oh, help me! Somebody get me out of here! I haven't seen the Passion Translation, but wow. He offers a resting place for me in his luxurious love. His tracks take me to an oasis of peace and excuse me. That, I don't know, would the most emotional of women like that translation? I don't expect it to be a bestseller. Let's just put it that way. I don't expect it to be a bestseller. And furthermore, just looking at this, I'm afraid it doesn't even bring the essence of the passage in. And you would miss the prophecy of that psalm and others. Let's see. I kept reading. I shouldn't have done that. Song of Songs, as we know, Song of Solomon. Chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. Verse 2. Let him smother me with kisses, his spirit kiss divine. So kind are your caresses. I couldn't read it. Thank you, Nancy, who says, I'm very emotional and that makes me want to vomit. I'm not emotional and that makes me want to vomit. So, yeah, that's okay. Here's a Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 5, 3 through 12. That's the, what is it? Beatitudes. What wealth is offered to you? Okay, so blessed is. What wealth is offered to you when you feel your spiritual property. When you feel your spiritual property. There goes into the feelings thing. For there's no charge to enter into the realm of heaven's kingdom. What delight comes to you when you wait upon the Lord, for you'll find what you're longing for. What blessing comes to you when gentleness lives in you. I think probably if the editors are watching this, they're going to say, that gentleness doesn't live in that bald-headed man in Dallas. For you will inherit the earth. How enriched you are when you crave righteousness, for you will be surrounded with fruitfulness. It almost seems to me like satire. Like if you were to get Oprah Winfrey to write a translation and tell her you want it over the top emotional, this is what you would come up with. Verse 12, so leap for joy, since your heavenly reward is great. For you are being rejected the same way the prophets were before you. I'll give this one an F. So, in looking for a good Bible, honestly, I would say get a King James, as I say sometimes, get a King James, put your big boy pants on, and learn how to read it. And it won't take that long. If you are totally inept at King James language and you read the Bible for a month, you'll have it down. It'll take you a month to get the cadence, to get the, F and est and thee and thy, to get that to roll off the tongue. But if you'll do it, you'll get there. who put this out about the lead translator? Let's see. Brian and Candace Simmons have been described as true pioneers in ministry. Yeah, I think I would describe them that way. Their teaching and spiritual gifts has opened doors into several nations to bring, sounds charismatic, uses Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic manuscripts to express God's fiery heart. I'm just trying to see... looks like they had some missionary experience, married for 48 years, so they got to be in their 60s anyway. You know, that they came from a missionary background, and this is not always true, but some who come from a missionary background sometimes do operate off emotions rather than scholarship. And because of that, there's not been much missionary advance in the last 100 years. I think that's true. We should investigate that sometime. Okay, sorry about that. I went overtime today, and I know it rarely happens with us. But I should tell you, let all the overtime add up, and that will make up for the 2 weeks that I'm going to be gone. We'll have this full week and next full week, and then I'm going to be out 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks of February, I will be traveling in Israel, through London also, and want to give you that warning to pick some series off randywhiteministries.org. Maybe like Wrongly Dividing the Word of Truth. Pick some series that you can watch and have a little watch party or something. Okay, but very nice to see each one of you. I'm about to sneeze here. I should finish the program, right? Look forward to seeing you tonight for the book of Hosea, and tomorrow and Friday for Ask the Theologian. Tomorrow night also for the book of Romans. Always a delight. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you next time. God bless you.